elephant in the room in this election is that probably, and from all the international or independent analysis that I am hearing anyway, is this time next year we are going to have defaulted.
Yes.
And nobody is addressing this. And the real question is, do we negotiate our default on our terms, or do we wait, as has been happening for the last few years, until somebody else determines what the issues around this default?
Okay.
I couldn't agree more. It is the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
This country is completely bankrupt. The deal that was struck with the IMF is not feasible. It cannot succeed. The projected growth in this country was 1.7 under the austerity measures. They've revised, the central bank has revised them down to 0.5%. In other words, there is practically no growth in this country, and the prospects of meeting the timescale as laid out by the IMF is not achievable. That's why we in the Labour Party have argued two things. One, to extend the duration for 2 years, and fundamentally reorganise completely the deal that has been struck. Can I just very briefly just quote a very interesting little piece of paper for you, and then I'll ask you who wrote this. It says, the European Union provided bailout money last fall. Well, you'll probably get the drift of it when you hear the word fall. But with austerity conditions so strict and interest rates so high that Ireland has been left with no realistic prospects for resuming growth and paying off its debts. This is a quote from a very, very interesting editorial in the New York Times. And our party fully supports the content of that editorial, which should be widely circulated. Thank you very much.
I don't actually believe the country is veering towards bankruptcy, but as in absolute numbers, we're not bankrupt. The ratios that were there back in 1984 were worse than they are today. So yes, there are big challenges, and yes, it's going to take a long time, but is it beyond the capacity of the sovereign country to carry the debts? There's an outer limit, which is something in the order of 200 billion. So if you see any numbers beyond 200 billion, then you know we're in trouble. But any numbers short of that are, in financial terms, pure financial terms, manageable. Now, that's not to say it's not going to be painful. But Ireland does have an experience, and unfortunately, we've been sent right back there by this Fianna Fáil government. We've been sent right back to 1984. I thought it could never happen. I qualified in 1985. Half the people who qualified with me left the country. Whoever qualifies this year, more than half of them will be leaving Ireland. So that's where we're back to the future, we're back to 1984, but we're not in default. That's my opinion.
You know, I'm no expert in high finance, but the word is out there that if you do the maths and you take out the public sector workers, no disrespect to them, but the people in the private sector, comes to something just over 1.2, 1.3 million. You do the maths, it doesn't add up. Can I say one thing as well? There has to be a full inquiry into the events leading up to the bank bailout. It's been catastrophic. And our Department of Finance is dysfunctional. According to one report I read, it has 180 staff. 3 of them are qualified statisticians and 1 of them is a qualified economist. How in the name of God can you run a modern Western country with a department like that? It's headed by a man who came up through the OPW, and our finance minister has no qualifications in finance whatsoever. Is it any wonder we got it wrong? They've got every single call wrong in the last 3 years, and they've got every budget figure wrong in the last 10 years. And there has to be a full inquiry, because it's been a catastrophe. And it's got worse and worse and worse.
The IMF money, if I understand, hasn't been drawn down yet. So I think we just have to work on trying to avoid as much as possible drawing it down. So that's by reorganising our public sector and reorganising our economy.
I don't think it's an elephant in the room, because everybody has spoken about the crisis we're in, and that crisis needs to be addressed. One of the biggest problems that we have is that private debt, the debt created by gamblers in our society, those who gambled on banks, has been lumped in with our public debt, and that is what is crippling our country. If you separate both of them out, if you burn the bondholders, then you have a manageable economy. Yes, we would have a debt, but it would be manageable. And if you invest some of the money which is now being focused towards paying those who took out bonds and in the likes of Anglo-Irish, AIB and Bank of Ireland. If you invested that in creating jobs, creating a vibrant economy, then you have a way out of this crisis. That has not been discussed by any of the main parties. And in fact, the Labour Party agreed with the austerity measures that they would be lumped over 4 years. We have said that it wasn't manageable. We said it at the time. And even the IMF and the ECB said that the targets set by the government were not manageable and that we would come into problems. They didn't mention default. So we shouldn't draw down the IMF money. We should send it back. We have wealth in this country. We can tax that and we can deal with it in that way. And it is, I know you're trying to limit the time, but it is one of the key issues, and it's very difficult in a minute or two to explain something that is as complex as that. But having said that, I think the Irish people are a lot more aware now of the international finance and the debacle that has been around because of the debate over time. And I do believe that they understand that there is alternatives.
As Brian Lennon has said on several occasions, Ireland has two crises, if you like, in the finances. One is, yes, the banking situation, but that is largely under control, actually. But the other one is the public deficit, and that was last year or the year before of 19 billion. Now, the government is on a programme. It's actually a good 1/3, if not a half, of the way through that deficit reduction programme, which was copper fastened in last December's budget, the adjustment of 6 billion. And as we all know, there's the balance to come between the year now and 2014. Basically, if we stick to that plan, which was approved by the European Union and approved by the IMF, we bring our budget into a 3% over deficit by the year 2014. If we stick to that plan, we will recover, in my view. If we don't stick to that plan, if we go down the road being proposed to colleagues on the left and on the right, and the only party that has somewhat sensibly come to agree with this is the Fine Gael party. If we don't agree with this plan on the public deficit, then our public finances will stay out of balance. People won't invest here, and it will lengthen unemployment. That, in my view, is the truth.
I find it hard to believe that a member of the government who have brought us to this stage can sit there and say that we should trust their plan. I think it's absolutely outrageous, because this is what we have to face. We're being told to pay for the gambling and the speculation of bankers and bondholders, and we're told that we have to pay for their sins. I think we stand very, very clearly. We do not accept the IMF, EU, and it's not a deal. It's not a bailout. It's a loan. It's a subprime loan, actually, that's bought by Euro for 3% and sold on to us for 6%. And they're making money out of it, out of us having to pay this back. And then we're strapped with a debt of billions of euro. 14.5 billion gone already. 6 billion cut in the budget. And another 10 billion that's going to be taken out of the economy in the next 2 years. We can't sustain that. We just haven't got the money. We haven't even got the money to pay the interest on it. That is very, very clear. We have to say now, clearly, we cannot pay it, we will not pay it, and we will look at our sovereign debt and our public finances, and we have a plan on how to get that money in. I think anything else is, forget it. We're just, and for anybody like in Fianna Fáil to put across the trust yous, my God, you've shamed yourselves.
Okay, thank you very much, Joan. Now, there's a gentleman been waiting patiently down here, and then we're going to go to this lady here in the check, and then we're going to go to you, and then we're going to come back up here, I think. No, okay. There was 2 more hands down here somewhere. Yes, okay, that's okay. So 1, 2, 3, okay.